we'll do roll call here shortly. Opening prayer. Jonathan, you want to lead us in that?
Let's stand. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for the opportunity to come here together today and do the business of our great city. Father, we pray for wisdom and discernment for these board members, and we just give you praise for being able to serve our community, Father, and live in this beautiful part of our nation and in this great state of Florida. And so we pray for all of the deliberations today, Father, that they would bring honor and glory to you. We pray for the board members that aren't here today. For whatever reason, keep them safe, Father, and bring them back safely to us for the next meeting. We pray again for your blessings upon us together today. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do the roll.
Chairman Burke.
Here.
Mr. Gansey.
Here.
Mr. Ferreira is out. Vice Chairman, Mr. Henderson Jansenius.
Here.
Schoon is also absent.
All right. Did you guys have a chance to look at the meeting minutes from last time? Okay.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. No opposed. Audience participation. Do we have anybody?
No, sir. Mr. Zimmerman has joined online, and Ms. Smith.
It's the iPad 2.
It is. iPad 2 is Mr. Zimmerman.
There we go. There he is. We got 5 of you, Nevin. You're all over the place.
Oh my.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, very like omnipotence.
Yeah.
So, all right, great. Staff reports.
Well, none from me, Mr. Chairman.
Jan, Brandy.
I don't think we had, did you share those salaries from the clerk association?
I thought Ms. Smith might have. That might have.
We had some salary information for mayors and commissioners that was shared with the Florida Association of City Clerks that we can share with you guys. She sent those to us electronically. I think y'all had discussed that in a previous meeting, maybe about the city commission salaries.
There had been a question about that, and the response from the Florida League of Cities, as a reminder, Mr. Chairman, was just like it's done so many different ways. They didn't really have a position paper or anything like that as far as the Florida League of Cities, but I think they did have some from the clerk's office.
The clerk's
association, sorry.
They have some information we'll get to you guys.
So one of the things that I'd love to have a placeholder on, and I'd like to talk to you guys about it too, is whenever you're reviewing a document, and this is just me being kind of a lawyer, is that it's very easy to review the things that are there and revise those, but it's really challenging to review the things that aren't there in the first place. So if there's things that we need to discuss that don't exist at all, like you said about fixing salaries for elected officials, that's something we need to figure out where that's going to go. And then just start adding to that list of things that aren't in the charter at all that need to be debated. So I know you want that, right?
That's a valid point. Whether we want it or we not, I'd be curious if we've ever had any issues with salaries, or should we just leave it up to the commission?
I believe it is in the charter. It's in the charter. It's the lowest full-time employee, whatever that
We just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yes.
Okay, fair
And so it's in there, but
I think it's number 11 that we'll talk about.
Then my point still stands. I guess it doesn't apply to compensation. I guess I would ask council if there's anything that could be in other charters that just aren't even addressed in ours, that to maybe present with us, hopefully via email, just some other things that maybe the beach or Tallahassee or Pensacola even considers in their charter that we just don't even contemplate. Is that fair?
Okay.
Nevin, is that fair?
That's fair. And what we can do, Chairman, is we'll look at the model charter that we have, and then we'll look at area charters, area cities around us, and we'll go from that. We won't look at every charter in the state of Florida. But I think we can look at the model charter, and that's a good place to start as far as things that are suggested to be addressed, and have we addressed them.
So let's if y'all could email us before the next meeting of just some broad topics, and then we can discuss it at the next meeting and even discuss which ones even, I guess, would even elicit further debate. I mean, there may be some things like now we don't want to talk about that at all. There may be other things that, hey, this is worth a discussion on. I mean, other board members, you all okay with that? Any other staff reports?
I just provided an updated red line version of our working document as you've been making changes. That's the only thing that our office has provided.
Immediately, I didn't have a chance to review it. I assume that reflects what we've done. Have you guys looked at it? Any comment? Okay, is it, I mean, not that it would be inaccurate, but anything in there? Okay.
It's our attempt to do so, but it.
Was there any language, I'm failing to recall, if there was anything that they were gonna kind of draft on their own and then get back to us that we should scrutinize at this point, or what do you think, Ron?
I don't think it was.
Okay,
Well, there is one that I do want to bring up.
please.
Under, it's originally section 103.
Page number?
Page 20. Page 20, under the powers and duties of the city manager, if you go down to the bottom, it's originally subsection 9, now 10. You'd asked us to come up with some language regarding the term regulations. And when we looked into it, by definition, the word regulations is just a broader version of ordinance, resolution, rules, codes. It really encompasses all of those. And if you were to add additional language, and I think what was discussed is maybe using the word ordinance or something different, you'd be narrowing rather than keeping it broader. So it's our recommendation that you just leave it as regulations.
So then, would it be more appropriate to use regulations throughout the documents? Because we do use or ordinance, whatever, in different places. And this is me getting very, very much down in the weeds. As a matter of fact, when I'm training associates, I'm like, when we start using different words, I'm assuming they mean different things. And so there may be an intent behind it at some point, only saying ordinance or whatever, and then we say regulations in this case, or do we want to actually go back and really refer to regulations kind of throughout?
Well, I can let Mr. Zimmerman speak to that, but right, you would want to look to see if that was their intent to use the word ordinance as opposed to something more broad. With regulations, I think the intent was to cover anything that the city commission did, not just an ordinance, not just a resolution. And then also we added the language right before that. So the sentence now reads, all purchases and sales shall conform to state law and to such regulations. So we did add that little section that's underlined.
Okay.
As was, I think it was also mentioned at the last meeting, but that's our recommendation, but of course.
Is Nevin, go ahead. You're very much muted, Nevin.
We'll be happy to look at it from a global standpoint. I think when it comes to purchasing, we're just used to calling it purchasing regulations as kind of a catch-all phrase, but we'll look at it and see if that impacts the remainder of the charter.
Well, one of the things is, again, just for me, is are there other tools that the commission has besides adopting an ordinance or resolution? Are there other, what are the things that you do?
Just a motion. For example, the purchasing manual, I believe, is just adopted by motion. But other than a motion, which is just I move XYZ and it's approved, or I move to adopt a resolution, or I move to adopt an ordinance, that's essentially it. But the purchasing manual is usually not even by resolution. They have a manual in front of them and they just adopt it. So that's why that it was, we came up with that, but be happy to relook at it. It's not a big issue at all.
Fair. Okay. All right, anything else that we should be aware of on the red line version?
No, that's all.
Anything else that you guys have for right now? I know it's kind of a working document, but all right. Anything else we want to discuss before we get into police protection, fire protection, and the like? With that, then let's talk about police. And I have some thoughts, or Ron, whatever you guys want to do.
Well, my first question, does it need to be in the charter?
That was literally my question too. Yeah.
Because most of them are referenced by ordinance now, so. Other than maybe a statement that we have a police department, does anything else need to actually be in the charter?
We're looking at staff.
I don't know if you've ever used that appointment of extra patrolman or the posse section
I-
of it, but.
That's a great question. I don't know what and Caroline's going to tell us in a minute as far as what the model charter is, but I think typically there's a mention. But obviously the authority for a police department comes from Florida statutes and does not come from the charter as far as why, the authority for having a police department. So I think it's just more of fleshing out the different.
One thing that I saw on here that I didn't know if this has to be in the charter is like basically the authority to chase and go outside of the city limits. Is that something that needs to be in the charter? But for that, they have to stop the city limits or not?
It is statutory now, so.
Yeah.
It's superseded by statute anyway.
Okay, so there a city police force is allowed to chase beyond city limits pursuant to statute.
Yes.
Correct.
My research was limited to Panama City Beaches charter, and they had no reference to police in there whatsoever.
Right.
So if we need a generic reference to police that the city's allowed to maintain a police force, if it doesn't hurt anything, then perhaps we can leave that. But I mean, the rest of the stuff, if it doesn't add any value, then I would just assume take it out.
One comment on that, Chairman, just real quick, is that, for example, the city of Callaway does not have a police department. They contract with the sheriff's office to provide that service. So I don't know that you want to limit. I think in your charter, there's a potential that you might be limiting the ability to do that or not. But that's the only thing I could think of that the charter might have some impact on.
So what now, like to mandate that the city maintain its own police force?
I think that there's a possible interpretation that if it's in the charter, you couldn't do what the city of Callaway did. Not for sure. No one's ever asked me to look at that at all. But I think that's if you just took it out completely, there's no statutory obligation to have a police force. But if you have one, all the authority for one comes from Florida statutes.
Well, for the board, I mean, my preference would be something along the lines of that says that the city of Panama City will have policing. Where it comes from, I don't particularly care. If there's an interlocal agreement that says it comes from the sheriff or wherever, I mean, whatever's the most efficient thing to do. I don't even mind sharing that in my discussions with Mayor Branch, just maintaining, not that there's any sort of discussion about getting rid of the Panama City Police Department, but there is just having a police department mandates a certain level of administration and whatever else. And so I don't want to handcuff the city in any of this type of stuff if we don't have to.
Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be great if at the end of this process, y'all can state, we simplified, 60-70% of the charter and shorten it by X number of pages. I think that would be, so I think any opportunity you have to do that, I think that would be great.
Mr. Chairman, might I make a suggestion? If you're going to leave anything in there, it could be just be the city can or shall have a police department, board's discretion, and that the city manager shall appoint the chief of police. There was Lynn Haven just went through their hiring process of a chief of police, and they discovered, because there's the interim city manager and attorney changeover, that the city manager does not get to hire his employee. The city commission actually appoints a police chief. So just
Okay,
a thought.
we don't think about that.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm for shortening the charter if it's not, it's been changed so much over the years, it's been replaced by statutes anyhow. I do like that, exactly what we just said. I think it provides that level of clarity. We do maintain, I don't care how we maintain it, if that's the city manager, if we decided to have a partnership with the sheriff's department, that would be it for him. He'd have to go after whoever's in that seat at that time, right? But as long as we have a police department and then that hiring process is clear, I think it's.
So there shall be somebody who's like an officer of the city that's in charge of policing. And that person is appointed by city manager. Even eventually that rolled up to sheriff for whatever reason.
Mr. Chairman, typically what would happen in that situation is if we did, say contract with the sheriff's department, my understanding is they probably would appoint either probably someone at the captain level that would kind of be over this region, this area. And then that would be who we have our relationship with. Unless something serious, we'd have to involve the sheriff. So, it could be, you could word it to some way regardless of that, you have just a clear chain of command in that, so.
So I'm not trying to influence the decision here, but if what I'm hearing is basically something that says, basically the city shall have some degree of policing. And there shall be an officer position that's in charge of that need not be an employee of the city. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think I would put that in there. I think I just make it as simple as that we'll have a police and there's somebody in charge hired by the city manager.
I almost feel like eliminating the police protection portion of this article and then maybe adding another section to the city manager that he will appoint. Maybe it is police chief, maybe it's fire chief, whatever that turns into, but he's ultimately the hiring manager for the city.
No, I agree with all that stuff. I just was wondering if it did go and rolled up to the sheriff and somebody was like a captain of the sheriff's department and they're not necessarily an employee of the city, kind of like the hybrid relationship that Burt Blue has with city attorney. I think Nevin technically works for the city, but he doesn't get a W-2, right?
It's
We
correct.
just said that for police services, that could be an employee, that could be contracted,
Yeah.
just like we do attorney services, it's contract.
Mr. Chairman, I do, they're similar to Florida Building Code and the chief building official.
Mhm.
The chief building official is designated by the city manager. We just got, and that's what it says.
Mhm.
And we just ended a relationship with a contract firm, EPCI,
Yep.
and brought that back in-house. And so the city manager is designated an actual employee now. So I think leaving it open-ended makes it accomplishes exactly what you're trying to.
So we just say designated by the city manager. I think
Yeah.
We've satisfied that.
Rather than having the entire police force go, oh my God, what's gonna happen? So, cause that's, I'm trying to guard against, our police force going, the charter review committee is gonna eliminate us. So
Yeah, that's not the intention
Yeah,
whatsoever.
but just-
Yeah,
third order effect, that's all.
yeah, I understand. Okay.
I just wanted to also add that the Model City Charter is more brief about it. It just says that the commission has the right to create departments, and therefore it allows flexibility as to what those departments are going to be.
So it
Okay.
doesn't reference police specifically.
No, it doesn't.
And that would be the commission creates those departments or the city manager creates departments?
And this, it said the city council. It allowed the city council to create departments. So if it wanted to specify, we want a police department.
So I guess what I'm hearing three things, and this may be able to help you guys put pen to paper. So, but tell me if I'm mistaken. Number one is the city shall have policing. Where it comes from, I don't know, but it can't be the Wild West. There will be police over the city. Number two is there will be a point person that's designated, and that point person is designated by the city manager. Those are the three big things. There will be policing, there will be a point person, and that person will be appointed by the city manager.
And that's very close to what the Model City Charter provides. It provides Section A, a creation of departments. The city council may establish city departments, offices, or agencies. And then B, direction by city manager, all departments, offices, agencies under the supervision of the city manager.
Okay, so if we can roll up Article 11 into those three things, and then is it necessary to have this in times of whatever it is, like civil unrest, they can bring on more patrolmen?
I think that your interlocal agreements take care of that. If you needed more bodies, you could get them.
Mutual aid.
He's correct, Mr. Chairman. We have mutual aid with
Yeah.
FHP, county, and all the cities nearby, and
I mean, to Ron's point, everybody wants that, but it doesn't belong in the charter.
agree.
Okay, so if it doesn't belong in the charter, it's not like if it's not in the charter, we can't do it. If we can do it, regardless of whether it's in the charter or not, then let's take it out.
I would agree. You have an interlocal that the commission approves, and we work with the other agencies. Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And then
For both police and fire, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, and in times of emergency, disaster emergencies, the commission adopts resolutions that would allow for more like payment for overtime and things like that.
And that kicks in by statute too, right?
It's by resolution, and we have a series of disaster resolutions that the commission would adopt pre-disaster.
Which are all allowed in statute.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I go back to my community association reference. When the governor declared a state of emergency on Bay County, my condos can do all kinds of things that they otherwise couldn't do to
Right.
protect the property and things like that. I'm assuming the same thing happens with municipalities.
That is correct.
So is there anything else that we want to have council put in and consolidate this Article 11? Shall police be a point person. That point person is appointed by the city manager.
I moved what he just said.
Second.
All right, any other debate? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all lost your ability to become deputized.
Ha!
All right.
Which is fine.
Yeah, really.
Oh, it's open carry law enforcement. I'm good.
Speaking of the Wild West.
That's right.
Also, I think for purposes of fire protection, we're just talking about that basic Article 12. Is there any discussion on this, or is there any reason to treat fire protection any different than we treat police force?
I would respectfully, sir, I would have the same language as regards to the fire chief as the police chief.
Same, they have mutual aid interlocals with all the nearby agencies, and the same thing with emergencies or disasters.
Brandon, what do you think?
The only thing I think I see differently is it's if in the absence of a city manager, the fire chief may appoint additional firemen. Does the police chief have the same autonomy?
It did. Wait,
But mutual aid takes care of that. So I don't have that.
And is it necessary to have an impact?
I think the difference, Mr. Chairman, is that when it comes to emergencies, I'm the primary emergency official and the fire chief is secondary. So collaboratively, he and I are the two primary officials during any type of emergency. I think that's why it's a little bit different for the fire chief.
As opposed to the police chief?
Correct.
So hold on, I'm not following. Walk me through that.
You want to maybe explain
Yeah.
what Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir. So, in declared emergencies, Jonathan still serves as the city manager. And the chief of police will always be his subordinate, whether blue sky or dark sky. But David, our fire chief, is given additional authorities as the emergency manager for the city. So he's in charge of the emergency management piece. Jonathan's role then becomes integrating the emergency response and recovery with the fire chief and the commission and making sure he gets necessary approvals. And then I assist David as the liaison at the Bay County EOC. So technically, from the FEMA's National Incident Command structure, the police chief becomes somewhat subordinate to the fire chief in those situations. So then we have all those essential service functions, like you would see at the state EOC. So the ESF seats that are responsible for budget, for admin, for response and recovery, for all the different functions. Those all roll up and report to the fire chief. So.
But that all happens via ordinance and resolution stuff, right? This is not charter.
It's the National Incident Command framework that the state and all local jurisdictions have adopted. I'm not sure how they've adopted it, whether formally or informally, but we do adopt an emergency operations plan. And what's the COP plan, sir?
The
Comprehensive Emergency
Operations Plan.
Yeah. And then we have a continuity of government plan as well. So those are all baked in and those are adopted by ordinance.
I think the issue is when you have some type of emergency, with the exception of a riot, it's not really a law, like laws haven't been, whether you have a massive fire, where you have, a hurricane or a tornado, it's not really a law enforcement matter. It's more of a respond and rescue, which does fall to the fire department.
And that all makes perfect sense. That's just not in the charter. And I don't know if it needs to be in the charter. I mean, you're right. Unless I'm missing something, the entirety of fire protection is in Article 12 here. It's literally 2 lines.
Well, and to your point, sir, the continuity of government plan inside the emergency operations plan provides for, what if he's not here or able-bodied,
So how many people have to go down before you're in charge? Just one? One heartbeat away?
I don't like contemplating it, but I really like working for Jonathan, so
Check your food, John.
No, I'm excited.
I'm gonna start
Yeah.
feeding them more vitamins.
Yeah.
So it seems like it says appointment of additional firemen during emergency was the main purpose. That's just one section. Is that necessary that it be part of the charter? You give him autonomy, or is that just procedural? Is it statutory? He has that autonomy anyhow, or?
I don't see that that's necessary to be in there. That's something you could easily put inside of our COP plan, and the commission adopts that anyway. So
Can we duplicate what we just did for the police to the fire
I think you probably could, Mr. Chairman.
and leave it alone?
Yeah, that's kind of all roads go back.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any other debate? All in
Good.
favor?
Aye.
Clean.
I do think they should be 2 separate sections, just to be cleaner.
Yes.
2 separate,
Yeah.
same
Yes.
language.
Same language, yeah, but yeah, just as a Scrivener's thing, it just would feel weird to have police just do Article 9, Article 12, but they can be verbatim other than the officer position. Okay, utilities. We'll be done here like 1:45.
Oh, shouldn't have said that.
All right, utility stuff. Where y'all want to start with this? I can. Same thing as kind of Ron asked before is, how necessary is this? Like, they're gonna provide for power, water, heating, all that kind of stuff. I understand the nature of, I think the city obtains water through the county and then upcharges it, right?
We retain it. It does say section 215.
But like the city doesn't provide power, we get that.
Right.
Yeah,
Did this statute
But
perceive
you
this?
could.
Like the city of Pensacola, they run Pensacola Power for the entire Escambia County. And they worked out an agreement with, I guess with Gulf Power back before they got merged with FPL and bought the power company. So, and now they're the sole operator. So we could, and there's potentially an ability to do that. That brings in a lot of money to those cities.
I think the question, Mr. Chairman, though, is like, absent it being in the charter, wouldn't the state statute give a local municipality the authority to do that anyway, whether it be through,
right, I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to that.
I don't.
Caroline, do you know, or Nevin?
I would want to look more into that.
Mr. Zimmerman,
iPad 2.
we might have stepped away. Oh, no, there it is.
No, I'm here. I'm not for sure. We'll have to look at that.
Maybe section 219 needs to be there. It's allowing us to provide service to those outside the city limits. We do that now.
So I will say, as a general suggestion to council here, I think one of the recurring questions as we move forward is going to be, does this need to be here in the first place? So like, as we address more sections, if y'all can look at that ahead of the meetings and say, if the question comes up, do we even need this at all?
Yeah.
If y'all can look at it and say, actually you do, because but for this, we can't do it. Just kind of be prepared for those things. Is that fair? Very cool.
Yes, that'd be great.
So let's discuss real quick. So the status quo with the city's utilities is, I know obviously the city provides water and trash, right? But, and then power is through FPL and gas is through like TECO or whatever else, right?
Correct.
And then I guess what is the maybe y'all don't, maybe council doesn't know. The statute just basically says the city can do whatever it wants with utilities. It can acquire it, it can outsource it. It's just as long as there's infrastructure for that type of stuff, then it's satisfied its obligation.
Just to respond to that, as far as water and sewer, the city's under no obligation. The city does have an obligation to provide urban services, whatever that is, that distinguishes a city from unincorporated the county. I don't think it has to provide sanitary sewer services. It could be septic tank. But as far as utility, power, and telecommunications, those are all regulated by statute. There's a provision where a franchise fee is paid for power, and that's dictated by the statute. There's provisions for telecommunications and payments that they make. So it's not charter driven, it's statutory driven, as well as urban services are statutory driven.
So the statute says the city has a requirement to provide urban services, but then doesn't define what urban services are?
Nevin, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
The Municipal Home Rule Powers Act and in the statute, a lot of these have an editor's note on them that says that these sections were repealed by that.
Yeah.
And when I read that online, it says it enables municipalities to manage local affairs like zoning, policing, utilities, unless expressly prohibited by law. So did that Municipal Home Rule Power Act kind of eliminate most of this for us?
I don't think it's needed in the charter. I think it's all governed by state statute.
To take a tactic from one of your former law partners, Bill Henry, as I've talked to him, he likes to take legal arguments and stretch them. If we truly, and just hear me out on this hypothetical, if we struck Article 17 and just didn't say anything about public utilities, what could or couldn't the city do with regard to sewer, water, electric, gas, all that stuff?
We'll certainly look at that. I mean, I would think we'd have the inherent authority under Florida statute, but there is, it does provide in Florida statute that cities have a charter. And so that's a great question. And it's kind of a global question that you posed earlier, and we'll be happy to look at that.
Even though I've been doing the lion's share of the talking, what I'm feeling, but tell me if I'm wrong here, like Ron and Brandon and Cecile, good to see you. The idea would be to give the city as many options as it wants for the provision of these utility services. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I don't think it should be a charter item. I think the Florida Statute 166, whatever happened during that, completely negated it just about all of this section anyhow.
We don't want to like mandate that the city must have it must go through the city for this, or must go through if it wants to franchise or interlocal agreement or whatever, just as long as there's the provision of, what did you guys say? Not utility services, utility something. What was it called?
Public utilities.
There was a defined term that was in the statute.
Utilities,
Urban
parks,
services.
Services, there we go.
Urban services.
But however those urban services are provided, that's between the commission and whoever else, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would think so. For example, Mr. Chairman, we could, and for the public, I'm not advocating for this, but we could get out of the garbage collection business and just let private companies come in and do it. So
I'm more so of the camp. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I like having the option.
Yep.
So.
And I would, to Mr. Jones's point a while ago, that I would, if it's not in statute, allow the city to give those services to somebody that does not live in this, it's not annexed into the city. We do that now a little bit.
We do, and it's beneficial to the utilities fund because there's a 25% upcharge those customers get because they're not a resident.
So if that needed to be in an ordinance by the commission or in the charter, just to make sure we don't cut our nose off, spite our face.
I believe it is in statute. So
Okay.
But we can have legal confirm.
I'm with Ron on that. I want the city to be able to broker these services.
Yeah.
But we just need to know if that needs to be in the charter or if they're limited by the geography of the legal description if it's not in the charter.
Similarly, you're giving additional flexibility. Some cities have decided to sell their utilities, so their water and sewer plants and distribution networks and collection networks to private entities. And again, like Mr. Hayes, not suggesting that, but can do that.
219, so utilities may supply consumers outside the city. But they'll be part of the chart.
That's the question for council.
Yeah.
I would say no. Pretty bad.
Yeah, as long as we don't need something, again, I'm going back to the lawyer thing, like, as long as the city's jurisdiction by statute can exceed the legal description that's provided of pages 1 and 2 by default, then it doesn't need to be in. Now, if we need to grant them extra power to go beyond the city limits, unless it's otherwise said in the charter, then we need to include that. But if that's a default, I guess.
So, Mr. Chairman, just something for you and the board to consider. When it comes to that, the only reason I could think that something like this should be in the charter is to kind of like codify it, because there was a thought in the past that you could get water and sewer services from the city if you annex into the city. When I came on board, I didn't feel like we had to force the annexation. You know, there's 25% surcharge on it, but you can choose to stay in the cap, you know, outside the city if you so desire. I don't know that that's necessarily something that you want maybe kind of changing with the wind. And so that might be something worth kind of putting in there, that you always have that authority. And so you can have a city manager come and say, you know, we're not doing that anymore. Unless you annex into the city.
So do that, say it again, do what now?
So in the past, you know, we've always been allowed to do it.
Do
But
what, sorry, what is it?
To provide water, sewer, and garbage services to folks outside the city limits.
Right.
But in the past, it was, you can own, you know, we had that authority, but they would force them to come into the city. So you're not really doing it at that point. My opinion was, I don't care if you don't want to come into the city, because if you come into the city, you pay the regular rate. If you don't annex in the city, you pay 25% surcharge. So I don't know that you necessarily want the ability to have forced annexation in order to get our utilities.
Yeah, the question is whether or not the statute supersedes that. I think everybody's gonna be in favor of it. If the city wants to provide utility services outside of the city limits and charge an upcharge, that's fine. We just need to know if that sort of authority needs to be granted in the charter. Or what it's saying, you can go outside the city limits, you can't unless it's in the charter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, but then whether the rate's 25 or 30 or 5, I don't know. That shouldn't be in the charter. That should be a administrative decision for you.
But if you force annexation, then you're not really, at the end, you're not providing services outside the city, because you're forcing them to come into the city. Then you're not providing services
But
outside.
again, that forced annexation, that's not in the charter itself. That doesn't say.
It's not in it.
Yeah,
No, that's what I'm telling you. So it's kind of changed with whoever's in the city manager's seat. I'm saying maybe that shouldn't change. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You see what I'm saying?
Sorry, it's like guys, doctor's office, and they were running way behind, but
A doctor's office ran late?
I actually saw the doctor today, that's why, but I'm catching it, you know, as I'm coming in and everything, but I hear what you're saying, Jonathan, that it would be better for people to be stable, and that the rug couldn't be pulled out from under them if there was a change of leadership. So by putting it in the charter, it sounds like we would anchor their ability to either annex or pay the upcharge, whatever it is.
Whatever the percentage is, I'm not saying the percentage should go in there, to be clear. Just the fact that the city manager, couldn't come in and say, yeah, we're not doing it anymore unless you annex into our city. That's what I would protect against.
I am persuaded by your comments, Tony.
Not to get too far off track though, I'm trying to recall do we have stuff in the charter about the annexation rules?
I think it was just a policy thing.
Okay.
So some of that was, Mr. Zimmer might be able to speak to that, Mr. Chairman. That was some.
I know we have may annex, but we don't have like a threshold where if a certain amount petition for annexation, we have to accept them or anything like that. I recall.
You're correct, Chairman, and that's all driven by Florida statute.
So maybe I'm just being dense here. So you're just floating the idea of something in the charter that says that we can't tie the provision of city services outside of the city limits with forced annexation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, those seem like mutually exclusive. Either we provide them outside or we don't. I mean, if you make them annex, then we're not gonna charge them the upcharge, right?
Exactly, because they're in the city limits.
But we then also make them do garbage, pay property taxes, you know.
Yeah,
highlight-
People don't do it because of the property taxes.
Yeah.
I've got a friend whose house is probably 3 times my size and he's not in the city. And my property taxes are more than his.
So he would rather pay just the 25%.
Yeah, he would rather pay the upcharge.
And for
Yeah,
their septic
it's
system.
based off who the city manager is at this time. You could have a finance one who's budget driven saying, let's add them to the tax rolls. You have to
Yeah.
annex, you have to. Or you have some that's people focused.
And it becomes an issue when their septic system
That
fails.
Wow. I was gonna say, that's my concern to protect the citizens, Mr. Chairman, is because if they're sitting on a $30,000, septic tank that needs to be replaced, and the guy, it's almost like you've kind of got a gun to their head, you need to annex in. And so would you rather pay $5,000 in property tax, or would you rather have to get a septic tank? So to me, it's just, if we provide the water, sewer, and the issue is the more people that are on a potable water and wastewater treatment system inside of an urban area, the better. We do not do utilities in the city of Panama City a la carte, so you also get garbage services as part of that. And that's if you choose to do that and pay a 25% or whatever the surcharge is and not annex, I personally am okay with that, and I feel like that's the kind of thing that should not change with who the city manager is. That's my opinion.
So
Sir, just to add on to that, if you have sewer available, if your septic system fails and you're on a waterfront lot, the Department of Health will not issue a permit for a new septic system. So now you're really like, if the policy of the city is you have to annex, now you've really got a gun to their head because they've got nowhere to go.
That would be forced annexation.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna talk to the board real quick. Does this go in the charter? Like, Ron, am I hearing you suggesting language? This is that like we something's not clicking here. Like, if this goes in the good policy, I get it, all that good stuff, but is there something that we want to handcuff future leadership to a certain extent by placing it in the charter?
Well, given the fact that the commission can change a charter anytime they want to by ordinance, it's really a moot point.
Well, no, no.
You can't change the charter.
There's certain little things they can, like election dates and things like that, but this would be the type of thing where it would say effectively you wouldn't be allowed to provide city services outside the city limits without annexation, or we could put that in there. Maybe I'll go back to Jonathan. Are you, at some point we have to tell Caroline and Nevin to put pen to paper. What would you suggest that goes in the charter?
I would just say something like, the provision of city utility services, which public water, sewer, and garbage, shall be provided, without, shall be available outside of city limits. And I don't know if you want to add a line that says, without requiring annexation, because without annexation, obviously that kind of is saying the same thing. Because if to your point, if you annex them, then you're not providing services outside the city limits. So
Is that,
Well, I guess the opposite side would be then, well, if I live on the outskirts of the city and I can get all the city benefits without paying the city taxes, why wouldn't I want to do that?
Correct.
some people want to do that.
Yeah, well, I as a city citizen, I want more people paying ad valorem taxes, right? I mean, there's gonna be a line there. If somebody says, I just want water, okay, that's kind of a staff decision, but if they go, I want water, power, sewer, I want the whole package, but I don't want to be part of the city. To me, they're getting all the benefit without the burden.
Good point.
I feel like to protect the city side, annexation should be encouraged. But should it be a charter item, or should it be, we don't know what
Yeah,
they're
right, both
gonna
of those.
get 10 years from now.
Right.
And the board might have a totally different direction of, we wanna grow, we wanna annex as much as we possibly can, we
Right.
incentivize that, right? If we put it in the charter, are we going to potentially handicap anything like that in the future?
What's future annexation?
Or
Especially
not?
ISO ratings.
The only difference is you're gonna have our water sewer services and you're gonna pay a surcharge on that, Mr. Chairman. But, you know, you're still your road in front of your house, like that's on your friend needs to go to the county, not go to me. So, and that's obviously way more expensive is the roads and stuff. 219 might cover it. Section 219 might cover it, Mr.
And
Chairman.
Jonathan, police and fire services as well.
Yeah, your insurance rates will default to the ISO rating of the county, which ours is a little bit better, so you could have additional
I
insurance.
mean, it's a sticky wicket because in my neighborhood, to get to Kings Point Harbor, you drive through the county to get to the city. You look on the map and I have all these services that my friends don't. And that's okay. Their house,
You pay for them too.
You pay for
I
it,
know, and I'm pleased to do that.
and I'll fix your.
I'll come, yeah. If I call 911, the police are coming.
A lot faster. Yeah.
Yes, matter of fact, in my neighborhood, the police beat the ambulance. Usually the fire truck beats everybody. I have to be pretty honest.
Those guys pride themselves in that.
Yeah.
I feel like 219 kind of covers it, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if they want to adjust it a little bit maybe to provide clarity. And
Just speaking for myself, like I'm very content with the way 219 is phrased. And I don't, I mean, I can talk out of this, but my initial reaction is I'm not really interested in putting annexation as a condition to 219.
Yeah. I agree, Mr. Chairman. This is a philosophical policy discussion. I think the question is should it be? Should it be something that is kind of locked in? You know,
Well, I mean, the reality is if you say shall have the power to provide people outside the city, but then they must be annexed, it becomes a double negative.
exactly.
Right? Then they're just in the city. So the mandate's either going to be, does the charter, number one, this is for council. Does the charter need to say that the city can provide utility services or urban resources or whatever the word was, urban services to folks outside the city? Does it have to say in the charter that we're allowed to do that, or is that a statutory thing that we have the right to do anyways?
I believe the charter does not have to say that. If it says the word may, then that leaves it up to the city commission on whether or not they want to not allow hookup. We had this odd situation before where the city manager could determine that water services could be provided outside the city limits, but that sewer services had to be a decision by the city commission on whether sanitary sewer services were allowed outside the outside the city limits. That was clarified just a year or so ago, where the city manager allows both water and sewer outside the city limits, and it's encouraged by the city commission. But that's a policy decision, not in the charter. As long as it's may, I believe that that's status quo.
In my opinion, there's just too many variables. That I mean, I could definitely see a world where the commission or the city manager is like, we're providing water to all of, I mean, I guess you can, I'm not trying to pick on Kings Point, but you can get to a point with Kings Point, basically saying, guys, we're doing all this stuff for you. At some point, y'all got to join the city or we're not going to keep doing this.
That is the bulk of the conversation.
Yeah.
It is around Kings Point, pretty by you.
And what happens to my neighbors is their septic tank fails, their lot's not big enough to put another one, plus they can't get a permit, so then they have to make a decision. And the lines are there and ready.
So I like leaving that decision up to staff and the commission. So I like the way the 219 is currently phrased. And then if the rest of the provisions don't actually add any additional value, then just leave it at 219.
Yeah, I was trying to look. I think that's the only paragraph that does not have the Florida statute 166 tied to it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole franchising and all that other
Yeah.
stuff, if that's all just a matter of law, then let's get rid of it.
Yeah, 8.5, gone.
Yeah.
How about that? So to kind of get Cecile up to speed here, we talked about fire, and we talked about policing. And the main discussion was that all that stuff is set by statute anyways. Like we don't have to mandate that there be a police force. That's all just part of the home rule power. So what we voted on and approved was that both police and fire, there would be the provision of policing and the provision of fire suppression, or whatever the word is, with a person that's appointed by the city manager to basically be in charge of that for the city. And that, and then there'd be a point person, and that point person's appointed by the city manager. Those were the three big things. But then after that, there wasn't anything else that needed to be in the charter. That there was some language in there about when there's riot or insurrection, that they can expand the police force. That's all by operation of law anyways. So it's just mainly want to make sure that it's not the Wild West. Like there will be fire protection, there will be policing services within the city. Wherever the commission decides to obtain that stuff from, that's up to them. There will be a point person that somebody can go to, and that point person will be appointed by the city manager. So there's going to be two different provisions for policing and fire, but they're basically going to be verbatim. And then the idea along those same lines was that there's a bunch of extra provisions in here for utilities, like 227 all the way down to 234, that are all usurped by statutory provisions. Let's just take that stuff out. And then we're just getting to the point of, we want to make sure the city provides for utilities. By statute, the city has to provide for urban services. And then the question was, and council was going to look at this to see whether we needed something in the charter that allowed for the city to provide urban services beyond city limits, or if that was something that the home rule power already allowed them to do.
I'm a little bit confused on the word of franchise. What does that mean? Section 227. Forfeiture for violation. Forfeiture for violation in terms of franchise.
Caroline can, I'm sorry, Caroline can look at what exactly it's used there, but typically franchise is, it used to be Gulf Power, now it's Florida Power and Light. It could be the co-op that's providing power. It could be telecommunications. That's what franchise, and then that's driven by state statute. There's a franchise fee that's paid. There's also a tax that's paid on telecommunications, and those are driven by state statute.
What does the state statute say about provision of services from a franchise? I mean, what is the statute in place now?
I don't know exactly what you're looking at, Ms. Schoon, as far as the word franchise. Caroline might be able to.
Are you using from section 227?
Yeah,
It's the title.
or 226. I mean, like, what I'm saying is, it says that there's a code and the Municipal Home Rule Powers Act. What does that provide with regards to franchising?
Okay, maybe that's something we look at, and we could send out a memo on it. But the term franchise typically is telecommunications and electricity.
I appreciate that, and maybe the others didn't cover this because there's just a lot of little technical strings attached, but I'm understanding that much of this has been taken up by statute.
Right.
I was just curious, what does the statute then provide with regards to forfeiture? It sounds like to me that 227 at one point was, if people don't pay, they don't get services. Sounds like the purpose of that.
Or it could have been the utility company loses its franchise agreement with the city.
That's what the Municipal Home Rule Power Act briefly says. Municipalities may enter into contracts or franchises with entities such as utilities to use public right of ways. So it superseded what we had in here. That-
And so this here, a long time ago, was that if they break that agreement, they lose the right to provide the services.
So Yeah, sorry, keep finishing.
So- Again, to try to give as much power to the commission as possible, I mean, I don't know what the statutes say, but I like that they have, if they have cause, they can say get lost to the franchise services provider.
That would all be in the individual contracts with the service provider though, wouldn't it?
We do the franchise
Yeah.
agreements.
So the only thing that I actually do want to suggest, because I've seen this happen with my condo associations, is my associations entering into what is effectively a perpetual agreement, where they'll do something for 50 years.
Mhm.
And it binds, it can be a no good, horrible deal, and they've struck, and it's just like we can't get out of it. I mean, I would like to see some sort of 10-year limitation on these types of deals so they get reevaluated on some kind of basis.
That's.
And Mr. Chairman, I think the state statute provides for a 5-year franchise agreement.
Okay, if we can't permanently say like, listen, trash, you have a perpetual agreement to always do trash and we can never take it back. Therefore, another commission can't come along and redo it. If that's baked into the statute, then I'm fine with it. I mean, like I just had a condo association sign a lease for 30 years. I'm like, God dang, guys, y'all just bound the next generation of people to this lease agreements and it's legal, but it just kind of stinks. And so
I've seen them do that too. They're getting ready to go out, so they sign all these
Yeah,
contracts and sign
yeah.
the board into commitments, and then okay, it's not my problem.
right.
I set all these vendors up for success.
So if you're saying there's a statutory limit on how long these franchise agreements can
Yeah.
go for all of these types of services?
I think that these are all great questions, and we are not ready to answer all of them today. But I think it is a wonderful topic because I think something you mentioned, waste. The city doesn't have to have its own garbage collection services. It could have a franchise agreement with one company and dictate that everyone in Panama City use one company, just like Bay County could if it wanted to. And there's a whole statutory mechanism on how, I'm familiar with the county side, how the county could go about selecting one franchisee to provide solid waste collections, and you have to use them. So I think that whether it's trash and in years past, water and sewer were done by private companies, especially in the unincorporated areas, and they're regulated by the Public Service Commission. Their rates are regulated. So I think it would be helpful to get the historical perspective that Ms. Schoon has brought out here as far as why it's the way it was. And then we can look at today, does it really need to be that way? So those are all really good questions.
What I would like to see, in whether that's Nevin or Caroline, is these types of franchise agreements for whatever urban services are. I would like to see some sort of time limit, and it's 5-10 years, whatever. I would just hate to see a commission sign away trash services for 50 years.
Yeah, just a quick search. It looks like it's between 10 and 20 years, depending on the industry, but I'm not sure what agency of the state covers.
In the statute,
All right, if it's already present, then I'm fine with that.
but we can always,
limit it.
yes,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think we need to know what's going on. Because 10 to 20 years is getting awfully close to 30.
There could be, and again, I go back to my association experience. There are some contracts, like when my buildings get cable installed and they run the fiber optic cable all through the walls, they typically want 10 years because there's a lot of upfront costs for the infrastructure, and that makes sense. But I've also seen associations do horrible deals, and they bind literally a generation of people to these things, and it's legal, but it just stinks. And I don't like the idea of having these, but turn out to be, I know they're not literally perpetual, but for all practical purposes, they are.
And sir, just to be clear, like it could certainly very well be trash for water and sewer, but a majority of the franchise agreements that we have are with telecom companies and the power company and TECO. So I mean, the agreements are great because they're paying us and it offsets our bills. So I mean, that's the majority of what we deal with.
All right, well, if you guys can get us some kind of idea of if there's a scale in the statute or whatever, that'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, I think the bottom line though is that whole utility section is to get rid of anything that's covered by that state statute or Florida statute. and only have a couple of bullet points for the city. Okay.
I'm in agreement with that, so long as there is a reasonable opportunity for that.
I think with the statute being so overarching and we don't even know within the statute, maybe bring it back to us next time.
For sure. Yeah, no, there's
Is there anything that you had said earlier that we need to include that we have included?
I mean, my 2 cents, I like the broad authority to provide utility services outside the city. What those rates are should be determined by staff. I don't think we should tie it to annexation because that negates the purpose to begin with. And then I just like the idea of not having some kind of perpetual agreement for any of those utility services, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I think it's going to vary. And so just having an idea if there's like a statutory cap on different services, or we can evaluate those if for some reason we want lower limits for that. That's just kind of a sticking point for me.
I'm just chuckling at only the state legislature would have a thing called home rule, and it's really not.
What do you mean?
That statute's called home rule.
Yeah.
It's not.
They keep
They're telling us what to do.
Oh,
So you left off the key word that they don't see as delusion.
I got it.
Yeah.
I deal with it every day.
Brandon, anything else about utilities? Cecile, anything else about utilities? We'll revisit that next time. And then, all right, boards and commissions. And one of the things, so there's section 20 that's in here where it talks about the planning board and the creation of additional boards. And then I did see there's other pages to the charter that talks about like the DIB and the airport board. And I'm not prepared to talk about DIB or airport board today, but is that something we need to discuss? At some point in the future? I mean, right now, I guess I just want to talk generally about Article 20. Jonathan, what do you think?
I'd have to read it. I mean, I do think the planning board, I mean, I think there was a reason that was in there originally. But you could probably, the other advisory boards, I think keeping maximum flexibility and authority with the future commissions if they want to either stand up a board. What I would say though is, and I don't know, state law may drive it to some degree too, but in my opinion too, if we have the opportunity in the charter to give authority on, yeah, you can stand up a board, but what if you're really upset with the board too? To me, you should be able to, rein them back in somehow. If it's dismantling the board or removing all the board members and putting somebody else back in there.
We'll come back to DIB and airport board in a second. But I mean, to me, 259 pretty well covers the authority to create additional boards. They serve at the pleasure of the commission. When I read that language, I didn't have any comments on just the general authority to establish advisory boards. When I read 260, that doesn't super seem like what the planning board actually does. Like the way 260 is written, where it's just an advisory board, but my understanding of the planning board is like they actually make decisions, they approve things.
That is correct. So there are certain things that staff have the authority to decide on the planning team, not even me. There's nothing that I approve. It's
I know Michael Fuller approves things, and
through my appointment of the director position, he has the authority. And then there are some things that the planning board does, and there's some things that the commission does. So you're correct. The planning board absolutely has authority to approve certain things. I think what I'm trying to say is, and I'll just pick on a board, and because I think everybody's very happy with the idea, but let's say our commission was really upset that Bob Micah was just put in as executive director. There's not much they can do about it. And so I don't know if there's language in there like if our folks on the airport authority support something that they're like, what the heck is going on? Is there a mechanism for our board to rein back in our appointees, meaning our commission board, if they feel like so-and-so on any of the boards is not doing what they feel is in the best interest of our city, the actual representative electeds of the people should be able to say, hang on, that is not in the best interest of our city. And right now, I don't know that it's clear because Mr. Zimmerman and I did have kind of a question about that, because there was, I won't name what board, but there was a conversation I had with one of the elected officials that was frustrated with one of the boards out there.
Yeah.
Just
Before we get to those, like when I'm reading 260, and I saw it second line down towards the end, where it says duty of such board to procure and suggest plans for arrangement of the city and with a view to the general improvements and probable future growth and demands. I mean, that's great, super noble, but that's not what they're doing. So I'm sure how the planning board functions is established by ordinance. It's gotta be.
State statute as well, but I think remembering that when this was written, zoning didn't exist back then.
A fair point. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. Okay.
Zoning is something new as of the late 70s, early 80s, I believe. So. Nevin, you were going to say something. Sorry, sir.
I'm just saying that, like planning commission, that's all dictated by state statute. There is an ordinance, but the ordinance, the authority for the ordinance is all pursuant to the state statute. And so the state statute sets out that you must have a planning review organization. It states, what they do. The only thing the city does that's not dictated by state statute, I believe the statute even says there are 5 members, but the city has kind of changed up from time to time how they make appointments. Just recently, each commissioner gets one appointee to the planning commission, and that is simply reaffirmed by the entire board. Your port authority, that is an entity created by special act. And so everything that you need to know about the port authority, you go read the special act and not the charter. Your airport authority, it has been changed over time. The most recently, a few years ago, where the membership expanded either from 5 to 7 members or from 7 to 9, and other counties are included. That's all by special act. That's where you go to read what you want to know about the district, about the airport authority. So those are all. And then there's a statute also that says that if you are appointed to a board, there's some state statutes that govern how you can be removed, and it's usually for misconduct or something like that. So there's a state statute that also talks about removal from public boards. So I think we'll be happy to kind of review. Are there any other boards that the Downtown Improvement Board is also by special act? And anything that you need to know about the Downtown Improvement Board, you read about it in the special act.
So revisions to the documents that create the airport board and the DIB, that's not going to be part of what we do, right?
Absolutely. You're correct.
Okay. So then that's fair. Then I guess I go back to the same thing that we talked about before, is having an idea at the next meeting that if just for hypothetical purposes, if we had no section 260 whatsoever, then what does the planning board do? Because what Nevin's saying is we have to have a planning board by law. And then they must have some degree of authority I know they approve like minor development orders and things like that. I think, that's not my wheelhouse, is the LDRs. I'd like to know that if we don't have anything, what does the planning board actually do by operation of law, like statutorily? And then do we want to manipulate that?
We can give you a summary of that as far as what the law requires.
I think it's pretty clear. I don't want to speak for the entire board, but 260 does not match what our planning board does now. And great point. I didn't even think about that when this was drafted. There wasn't a zoning code. That's great. Yeah,
Future land use.
Yeah,
didn't exist.
Yeah.
Even comprehensive plans, those went to the Tallahassee for approval, and Rick Scott ushered in no, they don't any longer.
I didn't even realize apparently I'm an ex officio member of the planning board.
Show up next time.
I'm going to.
Look, guys, we're going through this charter review.
That's right.
I'm here.
Where?
With all my free time I have.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have to have a planning board, right?
What it sounds.
Yeah.
Well, and statutes. What it sounds like.
So take out the creation, membership, duties, and adoption of plans, and just say the city shall have and maintain a planning board. state statutes. Statutes change, the duties have all changed apparently over the past 60 years.
I think
Yeah.
we should treat it the same way we treated the provisions on utilities, to just see what's laid out. Because
Until I know what the default requirements are, it's hard to even,
Mhm.
Yeah, for any touch it.
It's right, and they may have a bare minimum, but we could tighten it if we thought there was reason, just like limiting it from 20 years to 5. You can always, from my understanding, generally make it more limited from the city.
I mean, I think they just recently, the commission decided that each commissioner gets a planning board member. I don't even know if the entire commission votes on it or if it's just a rubber stamp, or how does that work? Caroline, do you know, or Nevin?
It is voted on by the entire board, but each commissioner has a selection, and then it's ratified or confirmed by the entire board. So presumably, if there weren't 3 that wanted to ratify the commissioner's selection, then that commissioner would come up with somebody else and kind of go through the process.
So each commissioner nominates somebody, then they have to be approved by the entire board.
That's correct.
I see. But for whatever reason, the entire commission doesn't like it, they can go nominate somebody else, or they end up in this weird
Right.
filibuster standoff.
Oh, 3 don't like it.
And the person does not have to be in their ward.
Definitely not.
Doesn't have to be, but
Well, that may be something worth pondering.
That's an interesting.
So you have to have a planning board member from each ward. I don't know. I really don't know. That's just,
What you ask them,
planning board
do
member.
you have to have a planning board member from each ward?
you don't have to.
I know you don't now,
Yeah.
but whether you should.
I mean, I believe some would say yes, because the way it changed last time, you ended up having like 3 from Ward 1, 1 from Ward 2, and then there wasn't 1 from Ward 3. There might have even been 4 from Ward 1, the
The way
way
they work, I remember that yacht club stuff was going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
all these people live in the cove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was a change, and we got 1 from Ward 3 on. And then there was a feeling that, hey, we need to really get someone from Ward 4 as well over an issue over by Lake Huntington. So that was when the commission directed Mr. Zimmerman and his team to modify the appointment process so that basically each of the 5 gets a nomination, not an appointment. It's a nomination, and then the whole commission, or the majority of the commission, simple majority, has to vote for their appointment.
All right, so if I'm hearing this right, we're gonna have staff get back to us on a simple, here's a layman's discussion of what the planning board has to do by statute.
Malcolm, did you say you recommended having something here about the revocable boards? That's not clear.
Yeah, I don't know if state statute might do it, or Mr. Zimmerman, I did have some conversations about some of the language, but yes, I do feel that, if there is something that a board does or a particular board member does, and the commission says, hey, we want to remove you, put someone else in there or whatever, is there a mechanism for that? I mean, I don't know, so.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at it, it looked like they served at the pleasure of the commission.
I think on a consensus vote, a majority vote, they could be taken off in
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
I think.
But he's talking about like due process minimum, I think is.
I
what
think
we're-
they're, I mean, I absolutely want them to
Rather
be
than
in
the
process,
votes when
yeah.
they're up.
Yeah. There needs to be some, I don't know if it clearly define a process, but I might have misunderstood Mr. Zimmerman. He knows the board that we were talking about with one of our board members. One of our commission board members got frustrated with something in the last year. And I was under the impression that I felt like the commission's hands were tied. And at the end of the day, like, I want the folks that were elected by the people to have, not really be hamstrung too much, with the exception of state statute, of course.
It's I'm sorry, but it's a state statute issue, and we can give you more feedback on that if you would like. But there is a state statute that has somewhat of a process for removal of appointees to public committees and public bodies.
Public bodies being like the port and the airport.
Port,
Yes.
airport, DIB, planning, I mean, the three of those all vote on spending money. I'm trying to think of some of the others, but housing authority, there's a bunch of boards we have, architectural board. So I didn't realize it was state statute. I thought it was maybe something in our charter or something that.
Right.
If it's state statute, then it's a moot point.
So Nevin, you've said special act a couple of times. What is a special act?
A special act is an act by the state legislature. So before we had home rule, every ordinance of Panama City was a special act of the legislature of all cities, of all counties. There wasn't any home rule ordinances. And so in the late 1960s, it was really revolutionary, and I get excited talking about it, but there was a new constitution that was approved for the state of Florida, and it gave home rule authority to cities and counties. Now, over time, it seems like, and I'm a very biased city attorney, but it seems like that the state legislature wants to erode and take back some of that authority that they gave to the counties and the cities. So we do have home rule authority, but there are certain things that are by special act, and that is in our county, in our city, the Downtown Improvement Board, the Port Authority, and the Airport District.
So those have been approved by the state legislature.
Correct. And there's also a hospital district that is another example. We don't really have interplay with them directly, but it was created by special act as well.
As were entertainment districts.
And we do have entertainment districts that the city commission adopted, and it gives us authority to do things that are more than what general law provides as it relates to establishing what goes on in an entertainment district. And Panama City has two, one in St. Andrews and one in downtown.
What about the CRAs, Nevin? Are those considered special acts?
No, the CRAs are actually general law that are enacted by ordinance pursuant to that general law.
All right. So staff, you're gonna help us with the utility stuff, planning board 101. We have language on fire and police. And what else for today?
More information on the advisory boards and the authority? We need that?
Well, are there any other boards currently in place that aren't created by special act besides the planning board?
Cemetery board.
Architectural board.
Architectural is a-
We have
what is it?
pension boards.
I think there's a lot of our boards on.
It might be useful just to get a list of the boards and how they were created, and that's something I know the clerk's office has.
Into your list.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, but I don't know that do we want to visit or do we want to mandate those things in the charter?
Yeah, I think I'd be curious to
No.
see what they are, what
Yeah,
they do, but
yeah.
not to have something where we list out what each of them does in the charter or what their
Yeah.
duties are, just.
Yeah, because we have, how many members, how they're appointed, their terms, all of that on each of these boards. It's all been.
Yeah, but that's all by ordinance or resolution.
That's correct.
I think, I agree with you. We don't really get into the weeds on all these, as mentioned, maybe 40 boards. But the ones that can control finances and the more important ones, I think we should, glance at, because even though there's statutory guidance, we may want to try to tilt it a little bit more in favor of commission control. You know what I mean, like the generic one that goes across the state, may
Status quo.
not fit.
I mean, are there other advisory boards that have a budget?
That they take to the commission? Is that,
Well, to Cecile's point, I mean,
I mean,
to spend money,
The Port Authority, their.
that's special act.
we
Yeah,
have
I get that.
fiduciary responsibilities with like our pension boards. They're not, I mean, they're invested.
Besides like them having meetings and I guess buying lunch for them, they don't have staff, they're not allocating funds. They're advisory in nature, right? I guess double check that. If there's any advisory boards that have any sort of non-de minimis spending, I'm not worried about it. They buy lunch for the board meeting, that, who cares?
Yeah.
But if they've got some,
On projects, capital expenditures, that kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
and not including, obviously DIB, airport and port, those are different animals.
Correct.
And like our infrastructure surtax, I mean, they're just approving that the way we spent our money is within the statute. So I mean, they're not spending money per se.
Seems like there's like two different definitions of boards. There's those that are just in an advisory capacity, and then there's those with a little bit more power around autonomy.
They're really special act.
The special act ones are the state legislature and they're the state legislature come down and they say airport's gonna have Panama City, Bay County, Walton County, like something over all of those has to bring everything together.
Yep.
Although I think the port is entirely Panama City, right? Or,
Yes.
okay, but still, but the port has its own budget that I know gets approved by the city.
And they're a component unit of the financials too.
Yeah. But they have their own revenue and expenses and all that good stuff that eventually gets approved by the city. But they obviously have the port director and all that good stuff. So is the airport. So is the DIB for that matter. Okay. What's anything else for today or anything else that we want staff to help us with for the next meeting?
I understand that the DIB and the port have their own either special act or general act that creates them, but I'd still like to know their general parameters. Because even though there's again a statutory minimum, we may see something in there that we want to tweak. We can always provide, is my understanding. We can't go below the standards set by the state, but we can add.
I don't know the answer to that when it comes to special act.
Yeah, I would, when you explain it to us, you could let us know. If it says hands off, you can't touch it, but generally statutory requirements for so many things, healthcare and all this other, there's a state minimum, but if the county wants to do more and provide more healthcare.
I tend to agree with you,
can do
and
that.
some of it makes sense like DIB, but I don't know what we could put in the charter that would at all influence the airport board. Given that the airport board involves multiple counties, multiple cities. I don't know the answer to that.
It seems more tenuous, I agree with the
Yeah,
ability
yeah,
for,
yeah.
to give more power to our city commission. I just don't know
I don't know.
what it says, and since you're looking to see what things say, and we haven't had a review in over 60 years, I'm kind of like, it makes me feel more comfortable that we did our due diligence and we looked. And it could be exactly as you stated, nothing we to do here, we can't.
So just, I guess, what are you asking staff to do?
Looking for basically a summary of what the statutes provide with regards to mandatory minimums, so to speak, in particular, because if there was something we wanted to elevate, I would think we would have the legal authority to do that, or recommend it.
Okay.
A brief description of each board on the spreadsheet, but it's just a brief description.
Right, you could share that maybe with Caroline, and then she could bring the legal aspect to it.
All right, what else for today? So let's do this. Let's shoot for. We should have decent language to approve for police and fire at the next meeting. That shouldn't be that big of a deal. We should be able to knock out utilities with a little bit more information. We should be able to knock out planning board with a little bit more information as well. And then we need to revisit the city officers and try to put a pin in what we're gonna do with clerk, auditor, CFO, all that good stuff.
Did you guys discuss the city officers?
No,
It's kind of a big topic.
not without JP here. No. And he specifically said he didn't want to discuss police or fire. which I don't think he's gonna have some issues with it anyways, but, yeah. And then the other staff recommendation, I know I'm being redundant here, is to give us things, looking at a small sample of charters that have things that aren't in our charter element. Whether that's Pensacola, Tallahassee, the model charter. It doesn't, for me, and please tell me if you guys disagree, doesn't have to be in great detail at all. Mainly like a title, hey, this charter has something in here about this, or this charter has something in here about this, and just something that we could just discuss. And we can pull on those threads, and if it's something worth discussing more, we can do it at the meeting after that, or maybe something like, that's unique to Pensacola, we don't need to worry about that. Is that fair? Like, please don't go put like pen to paper on actual language of a provision before we even decide if it's something we wanna maintain or not.
Are we back on track based off of our agenda?
I don't know, who had the
No.
list here?
It was Caroline.
It was Miss.
Oh, was the other Miss Smith?
Yeah.
Mailed it to us.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
We,
Randy's got it.
yeah, for March 5th, we had on there to discuss police and fire, and then March 26th, we were gonna do public utilities and streets and public grounds. So we actually did police, fire, utilities, and the boards. Leave it on here. But we still have to discuss city clerk and collector. Finance generally, taxation and bonds. Have y'all done that?
No.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to get back on track. That's good.
Well, and we have like 3 meetings that just took place.
Yeah, we did.
So here we are in early March. We have one coming up, would you say March 26th?
Yes, sir.
I mean, April, May, June, July. From a procedural standpoint, the idea is to get this on the ballot for the fall, right? Which is in November. So, and it's got to be approved by the commission.
At the, she didn't join. I believe it needs to be approved at the first meeting in July by the commission in order to get to,
31st.
by the 31st, by the end of July. Yeah. It has to be by, at one of the 2 July meetings, has to be approved by the commission in order for that language to get to, Ms. Ward at the SOE's office in order to have it ready for November.
Really? Like 4 months in advance, August, September, October? Okay. All right.
It's even worse than that.
What do you mean?
This, I mean, the first thing says February of 27. We weren't doing anything till, see the last paragraph. We do it ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
That
that's.
put it with us, the April elections, I think, with the
Yeah,
city.
but if we wanted to get it on the November, which is the desire to get on the November
Yeah,
ballot
yeah.
this year, then that way you have the maximum of people voting on it in the city of Panama City.
I know we had at least one public meeting, which was in conjunction with a commission meeting, which I thought was pretty well attended. Is there any thought that we need to or should consider having another joint meeting with the commission, because people are already coming to hear the commissioners?
I still am the opinion that we don't need to have another public hearing till we're all done. Here's what we're thinking about to change it if you wanted to do that. And that's
I would, I mean, so far we
a
haven't.
workshop maybe with the.
Yeah.
With the commission, if we wanted to do that, here's what we came up with.
So far, I don't think at this point we have anything significantly controversial that the citizens go, oh, you know what I mean? So far, we're discussing and looking down the road and doing all the right things. But some of the thoughts with regards to control with city manager versus city clerk are pretty significant changes that could elicit more interest, more concern.
Could we, I don't know, this is, I'm just thinking out loud, could we do a workshop with the city commission? Because I know they talked about this the last 2 city commission meetings. And we've got the city clerk position, the recruiting coming up on this agenda. That there's discussion about, oh, the charter's talking about this, you know, we're gonna move forward as normal until the charter comes back with. But like, is there value in doing a workshop, or should we just do our homework and not talk to them, or do a workshop with them, or? I mean, I could see it getting bigger, cause it's city clerk, splitting it, finance,
Yes.
throwing up a city manager, that's a big charter change.
Yes, it is.
And I haven't asked their feedback yet, I've been needing to, and
And we appreciate your pre-polling services.
yeah.
We're very helpful.
And I was incorrect, Mr. Chairman. It's actually by the August 24th, which is a Monday. Would have to have the language to Ms. Ward, so you could conceivably take it to the committee at the first meeting in August to adopt the recommendation from this board. A little bit of more, I think a little bit more room might be nice to try to shoot for July. So.
My 2 cents is I want to do that. I think we're so right in the middle of everything right this second. It's kind of awkward to do it now. I think once we got through finance and bonds and taxation, that's probably a good point to do it.
And the city clerk too, right?
Yeah, I took that for granted. Sorry. I mean, clerk, yeah. I think we're probably
That's gonna drop.
2 to 3 meetings away from, hey guys, I think we have a pretty good model here and let's run it by y'all.
I would feel good as just a regular citizen myself, and there are a lot of changes, and I feel like, I know JP has indicated, the more, we bring the public in and offer the opportunity to look and see and comment, there's less, well, you just did all that on your own, it's actually could smooth it over for the actual vote, because those are big changes. And that's what here the people, someone may have a great idea. Oh, didn't think of that. And at least that opportunity was there. And it shows that this advisory board was well aware that these are significant potential changes.
When, Jonathan, this is just me being curious, when it goes to vote, can it be a simple, here's all the changes we made, do you agree with them or not? It could be that simple. Should it be that simple, or should it be?
The ballot language or the
Yeah,
commission?
ballot
vote?
Yeah, so the ballot language, there's different ways to do it. I mean, you can literally have but if I recall, Mr. Powell, the deputy SOE, said you can have you have a notebook available at the polling place that shows literally all the changes. And then, then you have a more simple question that's actually on the ballot.
And we don't have to have anything to do with that. That'd be a commission. Once the commissioner decides what they want to do, once we base our recommendation.
The actual language of, because they would pass it in the form of a resolution, and then that language would be sent on to Ms. Ward and her team.
And I think in your question was, do they vote per entry item, or is it le menu fixe? The whole thing is like, boom, take this
It's
or
been
not.
both, it's been both ways, depending on the municipality's choice. Could be like.
I'll make it very clear.
Or individual.
I want it, and the way I'm trying to do this is it's one wholesale vote. Do you vote yes or no? And that's kind of why at this point, we haven't touched this thing in 50, 70 or whatever the number is, 50 years. Like, it ain't gonna be perfect. I'm sure there's gonna be future tweaks at some point, but we gotta get it as far as we possibly can without bringing up some third rail issue. And if we start doing piecemeal, so much of this stuff works together that it you could be in a really weird situation if something gets adopted and something doesn't. And so I'd like to just get as far as we reasonably can with a high likelihood of success. And then when there's the other things that are more nuanced, more complicated, maybe more controversial, the next charter can say, hey, do you agree to change this one provision and go from there? I'm not afraid of it, but I really don't want to be in a position where we put all this work into it and then it fails. Like that would make me feel horrible.
And I need to tell you this, if the commission does advance it, I mean, I know that we would work very hard with our public affairs team, both staff and you guys.
For sure.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, we'd be doing videos with you. You'd probably be going on the news and give interviews. We'd be asked to speak you would be asked to speak, probably y'all might be asked to speak at various forums. I would imagine. I think.
But I mean, not to.
We would be able to tell everyone way in advance all the great work that you did so that people had a high level of confidence. That should be the goal of this body, senior staff, as well as the commission.
So I'm not trying to beat chest here, and Nevin's dealt with this, so probably you too, Caroline, but I'm probably the person who's had the most similar experience to this by amending and restating governing documents for community associations. And you can put all this work into it and modernize the whole thing, and then if you put rentals in there or pet restrictions in there, there's these third rails that it just all just blows up because you've got something in there and you're like, my gosh, we put so much time and so much effort to get this thing done, but then there's this one like rallying point, and it's like, guys, just get this thing cleaned up. And then if you want to go the next time you review it and we'll just do this or just do that, by all means, like, you know, and then the citizens can have what they want, but like. no,
Don't
I'm
address
very-
feral cats then.
Huh?
Don't address feral cats then.
Yeah, we're not putting anything about cats in the charter, like I'll die on that hill. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, so.
There is livestock.
All right, and then, so things that we're missing, y'all can help us with that. Planning board. Language for fire, language for police. Status quo for utilities. If we can go beyond the city limits. Despite what the charter says.
And then default requirements for both public utilities and boards and commissions.
Yeah, that's what, yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. Okay. I know Brandon, you wanted to talk about compensation at some point. Is that, you want to bring that up at the next meeting or?
Whether it should be in the charter, whether there should be a defined guide compensation. It's very subjective right now,
It is.
right? Just-
No, that's a bridge we need to cross. I should know if you want
Bring it
to,
up the next.
you want to try to bring it up at the next meeting?
The elected officials.
Already got a lot of time. So then also can y'all tell us kind of what different areas do for commissioner compensation?
We got information.
Yeah, we have
and
some of that.
can
We'll share that in advance of it, and it'll be part of your packet for the next meeting. So.
Wow, make good time available.
So for the next meeting. We'll look at Ron here. Approve fire, approve police, hopefully approve utilities. Those really shouldn't take that long. Look at the clerk position. Commissioner, mayor compensation.
Probably enough.
That's a lot, right?
And then we'll have taxation and bonding left to do.
Okay.
I mean, you could put them on the agenda, but I don't think we'll get, I don't know.
We might
Be surprised, yeah.
We might get through it.
You did say,
Taxation and bonding. Okay.
you did say city clerk as well.
Yes, we.
Yeah, I think it looks better that we can focus more without having to stretch ourselves into possibly being prepared for taxation and bonding. I would prefer those last two not be on.
I kind of agree with Cecile, and I'd rather spend, if we do have a little bit of extra time and we can do it in the staff section, are there any sections that aren't currently in the charter that we want to? And I'll say, I don't know who's preparing the agenda. What I've seen effective in meetings, when you're debating something that doesn't really have an end, let's do that for like 15 minutes. We'll set a time limit on it. Okay, and then we'll talk for 15 minutes about any of those unknown items that we might want to pursue, but we can't talk about that for an hour.
Yeah.
And then so set that for 15 minutes and then we'll get into the rest of the stuff. Fair. Somehow I feel like we got a lot done. Yeah, we don't have like any language today, but I feel like we got a lot done today.
Well, we were able to sort of test the attitude of the board and give direction to staff and, not feel afraid of the topic, like we're gonna be prepared to take final action at the next meeting. So that's a lot, because some of these things are kind of like, can be a little overwhelming, but once you discuss what the main concerns are, then it's not that scary anymore.
So you're not worried about reading taxation and bond stuff ahead of time? We don't plan on discussing that. Do try to plan to spend some time on looking at whatever staff sends us as far as things that aren't currently in the charter that need to be considered.
And if you have that compensation information, go ahead and shoot it to us.
We'll send it out by the end of the day today.
Okay.
Anything else?
Committee, This is Nevin. I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to appear over the screen as a big head probably in front of you there. And and it was a quick trip. I'm with my daughter in Virginia Beach. Her husband, my son-in-law, is on the Gerald Ford, and his deployment got extended. So we're just spending time with them. So thank you very much for allowing me to appear this way.
Total non-issue, just like you're here. As a matter of fact, it's almost like you're more here because you're everywhere.
That's the way I like people to think of me.
All right, so
You're here with a big head, but even bigger smile.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I think I heard Ron motion
Yeah,
to adjourn
motion
and
to
Brandon
adjourn.
seconded. All in favor?
Wow.
Thank you.